Hey guys, Preacher 357 here. I'm out here in the shop. I thought I'd do a video and just do a little bit of talking and discuss something that I've been thinking about for a while, but apparently MSNBC had a guest on. I guess it's a regular contributor. I don't watch MSNBC, so I have no idea, but I actually saw a video that Colion Noir had posted where he deals with that, and I don't want to take the same approach that he did or deal with it in the same way that he did, but apparently on MSNBC they said that pro-gun advocates were hypocrites for not supporting Hunter Biden with regard to these gun charges. And of course Colion, he did a video, and he made some good points there about why we're not supporting him to a certain degree, I guess you could say, or why we wanted him to be charged, I guess is the word the phrase I should use instead. So I thought I would just maybe add my 2 cents, because this is something I've actually been thinking about quite a bit. But before that, I'm going to show you something here. Picked this up from a friend of mine today. It belongs to her stepfather, actually. It's a Browning High Power. Look at that. Beautiful gun. This is an FN, obviously, made in Belgium. This is branded as a Browning, but pretty much in pristine condition. Beautiful gun. And I have actually shot this gun before. Had it out here on the range before. But I wanted to get it to do a video coming up pretty soon with. So I picked that up today, and I'm really beautiful gun. Of course, I'm going to clean it a little bit for him as well. That hadn't been done in a while either. Don't know if I'll actually shoot this gun, because these things bite me. They just don't like me. They don't like me. Every time I pull the trigger, it reaches back and bites the fire out of my hand. But it's a beautiful gun. I love everything about these guns except the pain. These are far worse than a GI 1911 on me. Anyway, just thought I'd show you that before we begin here. But in thinking about the question, should 2A advocates defend Hunter Biden with regard to these gun charges, we have to obviously understand that he's probably not one of our favorite people. Personally, I think he's guilty of a lot of crimes. I believe personally he's guilty of influence peddling and taking money from our adversaries, which may very well be tantamount to treason. So I would like to see him get in trouble. I'd like to see him be arrested and convicted, but not of these gun charges. And so I have a problem just saying, well, he needs to be convicted of something, and so these gun charges are good enough. I don't think we should be thinking that way. Despite the fact that I think he's done some terrible things, and not just that. In his personal life, he's done some terrible things, and I don't think he's a very good guy. Now, obviously, to a certain degree, I enjoy the fact that he has gotten in trouble for illegally purchasing this gun, because the Biden family, his father especially, has been such an anti-gun person. And it's very satisfying to see them reap the benefits of their own evil, I guess you could say. But at the same time, I still have issues with that. I had a guy that I used to work with back several years ago who was firmly planted on the left-wing side. He was left of the aisle and not close. He wasn't just across the center line. He was pretty far over. And we were talking about all the gun laws and all of these things that were on the book. Why would we possibly need any more laws? Because there's just so many. And he thought that was a good thing. He thought having tons of laws was a great thing. And he pointed to the example of Al Capone. And he said, Al Capone was a terrible guy, but they couldn't get him on any of these criminal charges and on any of this gang-related stuff he was doing, but they were able to get him on tax evasion, on tax charges, and they were able to put him away because of these other laws. And essentially, he was arguing that the more laws you had in place, the more able the government was to be able to arrest bad people. But the problem is, if the government just puts so many laws into place, eventually they're going to get to the point where everybody's a criminal. And that's the kind of thing you see in tyranny, in a authoritarian type of government. They basically just make everybody a criminal, so when they decide they need to arrest you and put you in jail, they've got a reason to. Because everybody breaks the law because there's so many laws on the books. And I don't believe in that. I've got a real problem with that. That's not the way our government should be set up, and that's not the type of world we want to live in. The fact is, we're either going to be free or we're not going to be free. There's not a middle ground. There's not a place in the middle somewhere where you're somewhat free. You're either free or you're not free. And if we allow the government to make all of these rules and regulations and laws that are against the Constitution, for one, then essentially we're relegating all of our rights to privileges, and the government has the ability to do whatever they want, whenever they want, to whoever they want. And, the charges we see that were filed against Donald Trump that he was just convicted for, that's basically the kind of thing I'm talking about. Where they just twist things around until they get what they want. And, how many people could they possibly arrest if they started doing that sort of thing, on a broad scale? It's worrisome. I mean, it's something that needs to be taken very seriously by the American populace, the American citizens. And so I don't believe that having all of these laws is a good thing. And I believe, as people on the right or conservatives or whatever term, I don't like all these terms, to be honest with you. They're somewhat vague sometimes, and you don't necessarily know where you fall in some of these terms. But for those of us who believe in the Constitution, for those of us who believe in freedom, I believe we should be people of principle, not people that look to how can we get done what we want to get done, regardless of the way we do it. And that's what we see on the left, and that's what we see with Donald Trump, right? I mean, these charges were ridiculous that they brought him up on. The whole trial was just a sham. And yet so many people on the left that hate Donald Trump are just jumping up and down for joy. They really don't care whether the trial was a sham. They don't really care if those charges were bogus or if they even made sense. All they care about is that Donald Trump, someone they dislike, has been convicted. We can't be that way. We have to be people of principle. And in saying that, we have to stand firm on what we believe, and that is that the Constitution is the ultimate law. Everything depends on the Constitution. The government is restricted by the Constitution. And as we've seen in some of the Supreme Court rulings, especially in Bruin, there's this standard that we have to use with the Constitution. It says we can't apply the way we think now to the Constitution. We have to understand what it meant then. And we have to use the standard that was used then when dealing with these laws. Not just gun laws, but any law. Does it fit with the framework that the original authors intended? That the founding fathers intended when it was signed? Does it meet that historical standard? And the fact is, pretty much the 4473 form that we're required to fill out doesn't fit. None of it does. Even that section about if you're a user of illegal drugs, because if you answer yes there, then you are not allowed to buy a firearm. Now, obviously, I don't believe in lying. I don't think people should be lying about things, but when the government puts that on a form and says, if you tell the truth, if you are a user, you can't buy a firearm, then you either have to lie or you're losing your fundamental basic right of self-defense to own a firearm. These people are being put in a really bad position. Of course, I could say, well, they shouldn't do drugs. Well, I believe that. People shouldn't, I don't think, get drunk either, or do a lot of things that people do. Personally, I don't think those are wise decisions. And I don't want someone who's high on drugs walking around with a gun. But I don't want someone who is drunk walking around with a gun either. But I don't want the government to tell people they can't buy a gun because they might get high or because they might get drunk. I don't believe that's the government's place any more than it's the government's place to say, well, if you use recreational drugs, then you can't buy a car. Or if you're someone who gets drunk, you can't buy a car. Well, a car is a lot more dangerous, I believe, to be operated by someone who's high or drunk than having a gun would be. A car is a lot worse. And yet, if you're a user of recreational drugs, you can go buy a car anytime you want to, and the government doesn't say anything about it. So why is it that you can't buy a gun? And so I believe that 4473 form is unconstitutional. And none of that should apply. And because I believe that, as a matter of principle, I do not believe that Hunter Biden should be convicted of that any more than anyone else should. Now, there's a part of me, as I think Coley and Noir pointed out, that is glad he was charged with it, in the hopes that it brings a lot of attention to it, and maybe points out the hypocrisy of the left on some of these issues when they're the ones who get in trouble. But I would also hope that maybe in the course of defending him, maybe his lawyers do some of the things they need to do, like challenge the constitutionality of the law. Now, wouldn't that be something if, in Hunter Biden fighting this charge, he actually gets some of these laws overturned? Now, I don't think they'll let him do that. I really don't think that the Democrats will allow that to happen. I think they'd rather see him in jail. I don't think there's enough that his father can do about it, because I don't really think his father's really in control, to be honest. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think that's what they should do. They should challenge the constitutionality of it, if they really want to get him out of it. And I think if they plan on doing that, then gun owners should back that up. I believe that some of these advocacy groups, some of the pro-gun groups, ought to be willing to back him up on that. Not because he's a great guy, not because we like him, but just as a matter of principle. And that's just my view on it. And, you're welcome to disagree with me. I don't like him. It won't hurt my feelings a bit if he's in jail, but I don't believe in putting someone in jail for something that they shouldn't be put in jail for, even though I believe he should be in jail for other things. So that's my take on it, for what it's worth. I just thought I would make a little video here and talk a little bit about it. If you've got different ideas, just let me know. I mean, discussion is always a good thing, and I'm not saying I'm 100% right, especially not all the time. My wife will tell you that. But that's kind of how I feel, and that's the way I've been thinking about it for a while. That is, men of principle, we need to stand on those principles regardless of the circumstance. And that just because it's someone we don't like, we shouldn't back away from that. We should stand strong in our defense of the American people against this type of law. And that includes Hunter Biden, unfortunately, whether we like it or not. So I think we ought to stand behind him. But anyway, guys, appreciate you coming out. God bless you. Y'all take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.